Hi there, and good evening. It is Tuesday evening again, and it is that time. I'm on a couple of minutes early tonight, just because I've got a lot to say, and I thought I'd settle myself down and get comfortable. So I have my tissue in hand, and I hope you can hear me. So whoever drops on first, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me or do something. What happened last week was I couldn't see people dropping on, and I couldn't see many comments, so I just had to assume people were there and keep talking, which is what I do most of the time. Anyway, I am absolutely choked with cold. So to hand, I have 3 different flavours of soothers and lockets. I've got my trusty tissue. I've tried to set everything up so I don't have to move very much. No makeup. Hi, Natasha. Can you hear me? Since you're the first on, tell me if you can hear me. Because my microphone's been playing up a little bit. I'm just going to wait and see if I get a thumbs up from that. Because you might not be watching yet. You might just have clicked on. Let me know if you can hear me. Just give me a thumbs up. Or tell me if I'm making movement with there. Hi, Natasha. Can you hear me all right? I've got no activity on here tonight, so I don't know whether people are there. Brilliant. Yay. I like it when I know people can hear me. So I was just saying, I'm actually feeling really quite lousy now. I had a makeup-free day anyway, but oh my God, I couldn't even be bothered tonight. I've brushed my hair and that's about it. So I will be snuggling up with a hot lemon on the couch after I've finished this, and try not to sniff and blow my nose too much throughout the live, because that would be quite gross for everybody, wouldn't it? So I'll just wait and see if anybody else drops on. I've prepared flip charts. I'm quite prepared, even though I felt relatively disorganised. I think I'm now stalking and harassing my poor pension advisor to make sure that he has the funds into my bank account as and when I want them in. So I feel like a bit of a stalker now, but never mind. You just see a dog's tail walk past there. Hopefully there'll be no whining tonight. There's nobody going around with food, so we should be quite quiet in theory. So I'm going to just start, because people will drop on as and when. Aha! And there's Angela joined. Yee! Hi, Ange. So tonight, I'm going to get straight into it. So for those of you that don't know me, or maybe watching on another platform somewhere, I am Mandy, and I am an artist, a coach, and an author. And I am on the countdown now to launching my brand new website, which will contain my signature program, the Glowing Aura Mindset Makeover Program, which I will be talking about for the first time in detail on Thursday evening to the ladies of Mibber Newcastle. And they will be the first people to actually have a snapshot of the content in that program, and a little bit of an exercise or two from within the program. So that's quite exciting. So I launched my website and program at the end of October, or maybe into November, depending on how the move goes. My book was on pre-order, and it will be launching this weekend. You'll be able to buy it on paperback and on Kindle this weekend. You can just pre-order it on Kindle at the moment. So that's all the plug-in over, and I will be moving house imminently. Still trying to make sure all the money's in the right place at the right time. Hi, Tracy. That's 3 lovely ladies on here so far. That's great. So tonight, you never know what I'm going to talk about, although I do give you a clue. But tonight, I'm going back to talking about financial stuff. Not as a financial advisor. I would never profess to be a financial advisor. So when I talk to you about this financial stuff, it's from experience, from what I know, and from what I've done. So in previous weeks, I've talked to you about all sorts of different things. But tonight's a big one. Playing for the long game is a really important thing that people often leave too late, or think they can't do, or think it's too late to do from a financial perspective. And the long game doesn't have to be a lifetime. So when I talk about playing for the long game, I'm talking about 10 years here, remember, because this is episode 9 of 12 in my countdown to the website launch. And the series is called From Bankruptcy to Abundance. Now, the book that launched at the weekend goes from abundance to bankruptcy and takes me down to the rock bottom. And this is from my rock bottom, how I made my way back up to where I am today and the lessons that I had. So included in this is how I learned to play the financial game and play for now and play for the mid game and play for the long game, and how important that is. So as you can see, I've prepared a flip chart or 2 or 3 tonight. So I am going to be talking through flip charts because I think if you can see it visually as well as hear me talking about it, then it helps you a little bit more. So in the early stages of these episodes, I've talked about mindset, so forgiveness and gratitude, and how important your mindset is. Now, in playing for the long game, here are my 7 steps in playing for the long game. So 7 steps to success, 7 steps to anything. It just happens to count up to 7, okay? There's no preparation in that. That's just where it took me. So early on, I talked about mindset and how important that was. And that was about, loves a flip chart. I do love a flip chart. And that was about remember right at the start when I said it was like laying the foundations, forgiveness and gratitude was like laying the foundations, and mindset was like the windows. So you're rebuilding your life like you're rebuilding a house. And then I talked about getting your ducks in a row. All right. And when I say that, it was about living within your means and what to do with what you have. So just basically getting your ship stable, living within your means, learning how to live on what you've got. I then talked about planning for the short term and looking at 6 months. And last week I talked about change. Now the reason I've put them on there is those 4 steps are absolutely vital and essential for you if you are going to move yourself forward in terms of finances and have a long-term, robust strategy and plan in your life. Without them, don't even bother to start. And that sounds really negative, but no bullshit. Honestly, if you've not got the right mindset and you haven't been able to forgive and move forward, and you're not living within your means, you haven't got your ducks in a row, you're not stable, you can't really plan anything big or be consistent. So your first investment is in those 4 things, in getting yourself to be at a level where you are consistent and accepting change, which we worked on a bit last week in last week's live. Right, that's really important, and that's why I've put so much emphasis on that and then revisited it each week as we've gone through this series. I can't stress enough. And that you're talking about those 4 things, the mindset, the ducks in a row, the plan for the short term, and the accepting change, actually covered about 3 years of my life. All right, so it's not something you can even do really quickly. And I've said this before, sometimes you are really, really lucky and you hit on something big that takes off, but then you've got to make it sustainable. So, that can be a quick win, but you've still got to be playing for the long game and thinking about how you're going to retain. How many people have you heard of that have won the lottery and blown it all? How many artists, as in singing artists or successful people, have become really famous and really wealthy and lost it all? That's because they haven't done this next bit, the playing for the long game, of looking at, today is instant gratification, tomorrow is instant gratification. You get your money, you spend it. That makes you feel good for the short term, but building a long-term future from the revenue that you have got or you are going to create through your mindset and through change is all about your long-term success. And not only that, but also about what you leave behind for those you love. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 in my 7 steps to playing for the long game are the things that we've covered in previous weeks. So then we're going to come on to 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and I try and use my finger to point and always go the wrong way. 5, 6, and 7. The 3 S's, advice, and action. So that's like the next block of things I want to really focus on tonight. I'm going to flip my flip chart, licking my finger on, but it's a really bad habit I've got. So the 3 S's, guys. The 3 S's are self-investment, self-discipline, and self-success. These are really, really, really important. So the first thing, remember the first 4 things on there about forgiveness and mindset? Mindset is everything, absolutely. Sometimes in order to change your mindset, to move forward, to accept change, all the things that I've just said, you will have to invest in yourself. So, and I have invested in myself consistently over the last 10 years, and I still am. And I'm going to give you an example of that right now. Is tomorrow, I've got my very first call on my Women's Wealth Accelerator coaching program, which I have signed up for and start tomorrow. I have paid £9,000 to be on this program for a year because I want my business to not only be successful, but to be really successful. Now, you're looking at someone who has invested in herself quite a lot. I've got a degree in psychology, lots of coaching qualifications, but hundreds upon hundreds of books. I like to know the ins and outs of everything. Honestly, I really do. I'm so annoying, I have to know. Right, so self-investment, once you've got your mindset right and your ducks in a row and you're accepting change, what you invest in yourself in time, in learning, and financially is so important. It's the first of the 3 S's. Because we don't know everything. Jet's whining, and I don't know why, but there's obviously food involved, so apologies. Yeah, self-investment is so important. If you are not right and you haven't got those other things in order, you actually might need some help for that. And that's where self-investment comes in. The second of the 3 S's is self-discipline. Because you need to be, I think 2 weeks ago, we looked at planning for 6 months, short-term planning, and thinking about what you can achieve in the shorter term. You've got to learn self-discipline. So that's why short-term planning initially helps, because if you can set a short-term plan for 6 months and deliver it, it gives you confidence that you can deliver it again and again, and then over a longer period of time. So it's almost weaning yourself into that self-discipline and control in terms of planning. And then success, self-success I've put in there as the third of the 3 S's. Self-success is about celebrating your wins, publicly and personally celebrating your wins, no matter how small they are. Okay, and I'm going to give you some examples here. So you've worked on your mindset, maybe bought some books, or maybe you've gone on a course, a short course, maybe a workshop that's cost you £50 or £60, maybe £100, and bought some books. And you've been working on your mindset, and you've got your ducks in a row, you've started to work on your finances, and you've got a level. And then you have started to work on your change management and how you accept that. You've started to really do some self-investment. And as that improves, you will spend a little bit more on yourself and invest in even further. You've planned for 6 months and you've delivered it. You've got to then say, like, okay, I'm going to celebrate that success. Well done, me. I am amazing. I have done really well. And in order to celebrate that, I'm going to move into the next level. Instead of rewarding myself with a bag or a new dress or something nice like that, why don't I look at a financial product? And that's where the 3 S's, we're planning for the long game here, remember. Success doesn't always have to be about something that gives you instant gratification. I want to challenge you to start thinking differently about how you celebrate success and how you make that investment in yourself. So as you'll see, the other two things I put on the bottom of the 7 steps there were advice and action. So I'm going to explain that and talk about that. Advice is the first thing. If you're going to invest in yourself and you're going to have some self-discipline and self-success, and you've decided that you're going to start investing in your big long-term plan, the first thing I'm going to throw out there to you is that there is a real aversion in this society to pay for advice. One of the biggest things that successful people do, that wealthy successful people do, the top 10% on this planet on a regular, chocolate is a good thing. Sorry, Natasha, I've just seen that chocolate's great for celebrating success, but it's gone pretty quickly. Advice. The top 10% in the world, the wealthy people, the successful people, the people that are successful and remain successful and look after their old age and look after other things, pay for advice. Yet we think it's almost a disgusting thing to do. So that's one of the first things I'm going to talk to you about in here. In this long-term planning of mine, there are certain things you've got to consider when you're thinking about the long term. And one of them is getting some good quality advice. And then taking action on that advice, because there's no point in paying for advice and then doing absolutely jack shit with it. There isn't. So what I've done on the next flip chart, I'm going to refer back to these, but I have put up some comparisons of what are short-term and what are long-term products in terms of us investing in and thinking about the long game. So a short-term product is a bank account. It's there, it pays your bills, it's instant gratification, you use it regularly to pay for stuff. A more long-term product is an ISA, particularly a stocks and shares ISA. So let me explain the difference between short-term and long-term. And I've covered assets and investments before, and this misconception about what an asset is, all right? A bank account is not an asset. It goes up and down and all over the place. It's not going to earn you anything. It's just there and it contains your money. It's a place. It's like a box to put your money. And that box pays for things and it pays people. An ISA, however, earns you money. A stocks and shares ISA earns you more money, potentially, than a cash ISA. So, bank, short-term, ISA, long-term. Building society, you might earn a tiny little bit of interest on a building society, not a lot these days, maybe 0.5%. However, on a bond, oh, I just lost my light, that was good. On a bond, you will earn considerably more in terms of interest. And I'm going to talk about the difference. All right, short term, you can stuff your money under your mattress. All right, that's a fairly short term solution. Or you can have a portfolio of investments that will earn money for you. You can put your money in the post office. Or you can create something bigger than that and more long term, like a pension. You can cross your fingers and hope for the best, very short term, or you can get some life insurance. You can get a job, or you can open a business. You can purchase a property, putting down, and you'll see it's in both places, short and long term. You can purchase a property, putting down a fairly small deposit and paying loads and loads of interest to a bank or building society, which means you actually not make very much money on that property ever. So for me, it's fairly short term, and you might move from property to property. Or you can buy property as an investment, like in a portfolio. That's my very basic list. Not long, I could go on and on and on. I wanted to start getting you to think about what is short term and what is long term and what the differences are. So does anybody know what sort of interest rate, if anybody's listening, you know what sort of interest rate you can expect to get on a bond And what sort of interest rate can you expect to get on a pension? I don't know whether anybody knows the answer to that or anybody has any clue, but it'd be good to get some figures thrown at me. So hopefully while they're coming in, I'm going to talk about ISAs. So there are two types of ISAs: cash ISAs, which give you instant access, which probably give you now about 0.25% interest. So that's not very much, guys. Stocks and shares ISA may generate 2.5 to 3% interest, but you could also lose money because stocks and shares go up and down. So there's a risk. But let me tell you this, long-term investment is all about risk. And when you invest money in long-term products, and when you are playing for the long game, you are not considering that in the next year or 2 years or 3 years, your investment might go down. You are looking at 10 years or 20 years. What was the ha-ha for there? I think was that when I knocked my light off. Okay, so you are really thinking more long term. Portfolio, what's a portfolio? Anybody know what a portfolio is? Nobody's answering me today, so I'll just keep talking. Portfolio can be anything. It can be a mix of all of these long-term financial products. It can be just property. It can be just bonds, but bonds with different providers that have different interest rates. What all of these long-term products have in common, all of these, is that you are going to get a better rate of interest on them. All right, and how do I know this? When I had nothing, and I mean nothing, you've heard me say it before, I had pounds in my bank, and I had my little Suzuki Swift car, and I was living in a council house and paying low rent. I had nothing, but I had my pension. I had this here. It's the only thing I had. And my pension was made up of company pensions from Summerfield, from B&Q, from IKEA, and from a private pension I take now in the early years before I'd even discovered company pensions with Scottish Widows. So I had all these little pots. And all these little pots added up to about £230,000. And I know that sounds a lot, but it's not a lot if you can't touch it, is it? It's actually means nothing if you can't get your hands on it. But it's all I had. I had absolutely nothing else. So my pension at the time was earning me about 7% interest. You can't see that very well. 7% interest. And in a pension, that's compound interest. It can go up, it can go down. It can be 2% 1 year, it can be 11% the next year. It can be 2% for 3 years if you have a recession, and then it can be higher. So it's a long-term investment. You're playing for the long game. It's the only thing I have. I didn't know anything about pensions, and I've said this in previous episodes. So what I did was I read a book. I paid for advice. I got myself some pension advice. And that pension advisor that I invited into my life turned out to be one of the biggest and best decisions I have ever made in my life. Because between us, we reinvested all my company pensions, etc., into one pension pot, into a pension pot that I had some control over and that we communicated with, and I could choose where the investments were. I chose to roll the dice and put it into a high level, risk level investment. When you invest in a pension, you can invest at a 1 or a 2, which is fairly low risk, or a 9 or a 10, which is really high risk. And I said, I've got nothing and I can't touch that for 10 years, so I might as well roll the dice on that. Let's put it at 9. Let's roll it at 9 and see what happens for 5 years. And I left it. And I trusted the pension advisor. And I trusted this person with all my money. And do you know what happened in those? I didn't invest it immediately. So probably over 7 years, I turned that pension, and it stopped earning 7% for me, I can tell you now. And sometimes it was earning 30% because I had it in high risk, where the ones and twos were earning 7%. Mine was earning a lot more. So that pension is how I'm buying my house in 2 weeks' time, because we turned £230,000 into over £500,000 in 7 years. That's one thing. Okay, so remember, I had nothing. I only had the pension. So that was my first risk. Secondly, I took out stocks and shares ISAs for both of my kids. As soon as I could afford it, as soon as I got my ducks in a row, as soon as I started to accept change and never say no to anything, I said, right, okay, child number one, the oldest one first, I can afford to open an investment for her. So I opened an ISA, stocks and shares ISA, and you have to pay a minimum in of £30 a month. So I could only afford to do that for one initially. So I started doing that for one. And as soon as I could afford another £30 a month, I opened one for the other one. So then I had my pension invested in a high risk and 2 children's stocks and shares ISAs running. All right. And remember, I didn't do this all at once. I added these things a bit at a time, knowing that I wasn't going to touch them. I was going to leave them for the long term. I had my little rainy day account for if anything went wrong for the car. That was sensible to do, and that was about having my ducks in a row. So the next thing I looked at was, what else can I do? I need to know more. I need some advice. So again, I sought out advice. You go out, you seek advice from people who know. So financial advisors, most people think they're a bit dodgy and are scared of them. I love them. Do you know why? They do all the studying, so you don't have to. They can advise you, and most of the time they don't charge you. Would I choose an ISA or a premium bond for a child? I'd roll the dice on a stocks and shares ISA, because over the long-term planning, over the long term, it will give you potentially a better return. They're always a risk, all of these products, and it's just a decision you have to live with. That's the question that came in from Natasha there. I have pensions for both of my children, but I'm coming to that. So I've started out, I've invested my pension. I've got a stocks and shares ISA for each of my kids. I then decide to start them both a savings bond. And this isn't a premium bond, this is an offshore bond. So I get them both an offshore bond, make a lump sum payment, and then pay monthly into that. That guarantees me a return over the long term. Can't touch it for 10 years. It's impossible. I can't touch it. I can't access it, and it's in my kids' names. So I knew all of this. So as I earned a little bit more every month, I would start one more financial product. I did not have the dress. I did not have the new shoes. I did not have all the other things that you would maybe treat yourself to if you've done well. I said, right, I'm earning an extra £30. What can I invest it in? I have life assurance. If anything happens to me, don't cross my fingers. My kids are looked after because I've got life assurance. And my portfolio consists of my pension investment, my bonds, my ISAs. So I then went to the next step as I could, because I saw how well my pension had performed and how well it was doing. I went to the next level and opened a pension. You can open a pension for your children as soon as they are 14, guys. So both my children have pensions. For every £100 you put into a pension, the government put in 20. So I don't pay £100 into each of my children's pensions. I pay 60 into one, 40 into another, yeah, but still £20 goes in joint into both of them collectively. So the government's put in free money in there for your children's pension. And if you're starting them at 14, they're pretty much guaranteed they're going to have some money when they retire, because you can't guarantee on getting any from the government. Also, for anybody out there on tax credits that's getting universal credit or tax credit, there is a fantastic government savings product. Yeah, you go onto the tax credits website and look at Help to Save scheme. The government are giving you 50% interest on your savings at the minute if you put £50 a month in, if you're getting any level of tax credits. And if you're getting tax credits and you're not doing that, you're nuts. I'm just going to say it, you're nuts. right? £50 a month you put in, that's £600 a year. Yeah, and the government are going to give you £300 a year in interest. You cannot get that interest rate anywhere else. So it's all about just taking a look, but you've got to save for 4 years with that government help to save scheme. You can't just do it and mess about with it, and they don't give you the money up front, you get it at the end. So it's about looking at what there is out there. It's about thinking. It's about all those things we've been working through. And what I did was just a bit at a time. I had that one big thing, yeah, that pension that I could take. I could have taken that risk though, guys, and lost every single penny of that pension. Yeah, at level 9, at risk level 9, I could have lost every single penny. I didn't, because I left it alone. I played it for the long game, and it's only in the last 2 years that I reduced that risk level when I knew it was hitting the $500,000 mark. So over the last couple of years, I've reduced the risk level. Both my kids have pensions. Both my kids have bonds. Both my kids have stocks and shares ISA. In fact, Becca cashed hers in at 18 and bought her first car with it. And then I've not even got time. Look at me, I've run over time to cover, job versus business. Business is an asset. Job is a job. And property is only an investment if you're buying it outright or you're buying buy-to-lets and earning some money from them. So I'm really sorry, I always go over when I talk about financial stuff, but I knew nothing 10 years ago. And if you haven't got the time to learn, then get some advice from a professional who's spent the years learning and who will give you good advice to help you turn your money into double your money in 10 years. You can do it. It's possible. I hope that's been of help to you, and I hope it's actually opened up a few bits of curiosity, and maybe that's something I'll have a look into. Maybe you want to fire me a message over and get some direction. You know what? That's what I'm here for. Do that. I just want everybody else to be as successful as it's possible to be. Just thinking a bit further than just instant gratification this week, this month and this year. Sometimes you've got to think about what when I'm 50, what when I'm 60, what when my kids are 50. Anyway, I'm going off to watch Holby. That felt like I was talking for 5 minutes, so I don't want to talk any longer. I'd love to. I could still be here at midnight and still talking about this, and I still wouldn't have covered it all. It's such a big subject. But if you want to know any more, drop me a message. Love and colour. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you next week. Don't miss next week. We're on the final 3 weeks, and hopefully the week after or the week after that will be in the new house, and I won't have packing boxes everywhere. That will be absolutely fantastic. Thanks for watching me again, guys. You're all amazing.